Hi, it's Nevo again from DYDX, and welcome to the defined stage of the design thinking course. Right, so as you guys will remember from our previous kind of discussions, the persona is one of the tools that we use to identify the ideal user that we're solving for and to communicate that clearly to other people so everyone understands who this person is, what their needs, wants, desires, contexts, and decision trade-offs are that they're making. So we can help build a solution that works for them. One of the key things that we find with the personas is that they obviously evolve as you work through the process. And what's really interesting is how do you choose which components to evolve as you go through and learn more and more about them throughout the phases. What I often find is really useful is to focus on the elements that are around decision making or around context, because they really give you a sense of what could be stopping the persona from employing the solution. As you get closer and closer to testing prototypes, what you'll also see come out is certain kind of inertias or learned behaviors that users have that may stop the new ideas you have or new solutions from being adopted. Those should also be added to the persona. So you almost create a section that says, they won't do this because. We often find that a pre-mortem or a reason why this idea will fail horribly is a very useful tool to bring these things out. I mean, we often, naturally, we don't want to think of why a great idea is not such a great idea or why a great idea is harder for people to accept than we think it should be because it's so genius. I mean, literally, I can't believe they can't accept this idea. But the truth is that people are set in their ways or people have contexts and things that really make it hard for them to accept that. And the persona should really reflect that over time. We find that our personas grow. So you might start off with a page or a page and a half persona, but by the time you finish your project, your persona will have 2 or 3 pages, all very relevant towards the experiences we have around their contexts that future designers and future developers and other people that will work with the products as we take them forward really find useful and enriching for them and help them shape their understanding of how this project should roll out. It's important to realize that whenever you're doing work, you're not, and you're creating these personas or customer journeys or any kind of legacy documents that will live on with this project, is that you're not just developing this for yourselves right now. You're also developing it for future people. As a project really takes life, you'll find that they just grow and more people will join. There'll be more developers, or there might be more service designers, or there might be operations people, there might be support people, there might be more product marketing people. These projects always end up expanding in size. And the work that you do now, the research, becomes really core for how they develop what they're doing later on. So don't just design things for yourself in your mind and make it super pretty and say, this is so beautiful, but skim out on information. Rather go for slightly less pretty, but more informative, because then it has a longer lifespan within the organization. Design thinking is generally focused around solving problems for 1 or maybe 2 persona kind of archetypes. So when we're working with these kind of solutions, we're really looking at whose problems are we solving, and it's ideally one very specific persona that you've put together. Now, obviously, that persona is not one individual person. It's rather a collection of a number of people that you've interviewed and identified commonalities, and those commonalities are basically along a growing trend. In other words, those commonalities will be true in the future versus being true in the past. In other words, it's behavior that is increasing over time versus decreasing over time. If you think of cell phone usage and smartphone usage, we can only assume that behavior will grow over time, and people will become more and more evolved with cell phones and smartphones, and it will decrease over time. However, even when we think about that, you'd have to do an analysis and say, well, hold on a second, will people be speaking more on the phone or texting more on their phone? So those are always interesting things to look about. It's okay, they might be using more smartphones, but how will they use the smartphones? Is the behavior going to change? And how does this change in behavior maybe impact the way that we will interact with that device or with that persona as we take it forward? One of the interesting mistakes we often see being done with personas, and we often struggle with this even with our own kind of junior staff that come onto projects, is when people start looking at goals and aspirations or fear of the user or the persona, they go too broad. We end up with personas whose goals are to I don't know, climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Like I'm being facetious, but the goals just aren't relevant to the environment or the problem, and they're just too broad. And you don't want to waste your time with goals like that. You want to keep your goals and your fears aligned to the process that you're working in, that really, really helps you ground it and ground the persona in a way that's useful for people overall. It's better to put kind of background stories, and if you want to say, oh, they have a family of 2, and so like Margaret is a mother of 2, and she's really worried about her son kind of finishing matric. If you feel that's really relevant and common to the personas, rather put that in the story versus in the bullet point or the more analytical sides of the persona. When you're doing a persona for design thinking project, it's not the same as you would a persona from a marketing perspective. A marketing perspective is really looking around, kind of what brands is this person kind of like, and what channels are they looking at, and maybe you'd look a little bit around affordability and some other factors there if it was a really good persona. The design thinking persona is much more about the context. It's much more about the decision architecture they have, and much more about the problem they're trying to solve. If you think about it, you're looking a lot more at the job the person is trying to do, what it is they're trying to fulfill, versus how it is that you would sell them this thing that you've created. So a marketing persona would almost be a subset of the design thinking persona, and would ask more questions because it's really looking and understanding how I would sell my idea to this person, while the design thinking persona is really trying to say, what is this person's need and problem, and do I have something to offer them that can solve that problem?